The whole object of being a unit production manager is to make sure that shows don't go over budget. Since the regular CBC TV talk show and panel shows were pretty formulaic, it was never a problem. But variety shows were a different kettle of fish. I was managing the filming of the Canada Day show in Ottawa, and the CBC director wanted to install rain-resistant lights, just in case it rained. They were very expensive, and it meant the show would be over budget by quite a lot. I told him that, but he insisted on the lights. So I spoke to the financial manager in the department, who said, "Oh, you know how Jim is, let him have what he wants. Don't worry about it." At that point, I was wondering why I was bothering to make sure shows were on budget if it didn't really matter. It was then I began thinking of going to Los Angeles. I'd always kept in touch with John Hirsch, and in fact, even though he'd left the CBC, I still functioned as his right hand. I know, how did I manage to do it all? Looking back, I wonder that myself. He'd gone to Los Angeles to direct Anthony Hopkins in The Tempest at the Mark Taper Forum and said, "You should come and visit." Since I was due to have a couple of weeks' holiday, I said I'd think about it. Well, John had only been in LA for 2 weeks when I got a desperate call pleading with me to join him. Apparently he was having problems with Anthony Hopkins, who, according to John, refused to follow directions, and John needed me to find out why. I understood the sensitivities and insecurities of actors and often stepped in as a calming influence, since Mr. Hirsch could often be tough on them. There was no doubt that he was a brilliant theatre director, but he wasn't the most patient of people. Despite this, actors and other artistic talent liked working with him because he challenged their sensibilities, and they learnt so much from him, as did I. I called my travel agent and arranged a flight to Los Angeles. Even though John said I'd be able to stay with his assistant director in the San Fernando Valley, I had a yen to spend the first night in a Hollywood hotel. So my travel agent arranged for me to stay at the Roosevelt Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard in the heart of Hollywood. Or so I thought. I arrived at night, so I could only see the marvellous array of lights blinking a welcome as the plane landed at LAX. A taxi took me to my hotel, a 20-minute drive from the airport. And although rather shabby, I was impressed with the old Hollywood feel of the building. My room was small and also on the shabby side, but I was too tired to worry about the decor. I was excited when I woke around 7 a.m. with the sunshine streaming through my window, but was disappointed that the view onto Hollywood Boulevard revealed further shabbiness. I decided to take a walk along the boulevard, go to a nice cafe and have breakfast. It was close to 8 a.m. when I ventured onto the star-studded pavements and was shocked to see drunken and homeless men lying on top of those famous icons. Then there were suspicious-looking younger people huddled in doorways and women of varying ages in questionable garb. Apart from these down-and-outs, there was no one else on the boulevard except me. With some trepidation, I crossed to the other side of the road to Grauman's Chinese Theatre. But even the excitement of seeing famous body parts immortalized in cement could not overcome the disgust I was feeling at the filth of the boulevard, which was filled with piles of rubbish, bottles and cans, and there was an overriding smell of urine, vomit and excrement. This was absolutely not the glamorous Hollywood I had envisaged, and a complete contrast to Toronto, where the streets were clean and pristine. I hastily returned to my hotel, and in the light of day could see what a terribly run-down place it was too. Well, if this was Hollywood, what else could be in store? Nothing could be worse than this. I called the number John had given me for William, his assistant director, and when he heard where I was staying, said, "Well, we've got to get you out of there as soon as possible." An hour later, I was on my way to downtown LA, which seemed just as shabby as Hollywood Boulevard, if not worse. I was pleasantly surprised, though, when we arrived at the Mark Taper Forum. It was a modern circular theatre located in the heart of downtown at the beautifully designed Music Centre Plaza and nestled in between two other theatres, the Dorothy Chandler and the Amundsen. The plaza was filled with fountains and colourful plants and was a very peaceful environment. However, this did not quite spill over into the environment inside the taper. I could see that John was very stressed, and after a welcome hug, he took me to one side and explained the issues he was having with Anthony Hopkins. Not only did he not respond to John's direction, he often changed his blocking on the stage, which the actors found very frustrating. It's essential that actors know where to stand, exit or enter during the play, and are not blocking one another from being seen while they perform. That's what blocking is. William then took me along to meet Tony Hopkins, and we bonded right away over the fact that he was from the same part of Wales as my mother, Glamorgan. Eventually he confessed that working with John Hirsch had been a traumatic experience, and he wasn't getting the encouragement he needed. "He reminds me of my father. I could never do anything right for my father," he said. "Even to this day, he tells me, 'Boyo, why can't you get a real job instead of this acting lark?'" So here was a celebrated actor who was still holding on to negative messages instilled by his father, and it was seriously impacting his work. Unfortunately, this is a common theme with many people, whether famous or not. We all need to be acknowledged and appreciated for who we are, no matter our age, but particularly as children. Positive messages will then give us the confidence to realise our own uniqueness and in turn be able to pass this confidence on to the next generation. In the case of Tony Hopkins, he was just coming out of a very dark period in his life, and there seemed to be quite a few demons at work. It was well known that he'd previously had a drinking problem, and since this was the first play he'd done in a while, he was actually struggling with stage fright. Stephanie Zimbalist, who played Miranda, his daughter in the play, had a difficult time with his unpredictability. John was particularly annoyed that Hopkins, as Prospero, had difficulty hugging and showing affection to Stephanie's character Miranda, which was called for in the scene when she leaves the island. When I asked Tony if he had an issue with Stephanie, I actually said, "Does she have BO or something?" He laughed and said, "No, she reminds me of my daughter and it makes me sad." Apparently he hadn't seen his daughter for over 2 years, and he felt that hugging Stephanie as Miranda would trigger an emotional response and he'd break down. I'm glad to say that everything worked out in the end. The Tempest was a huge success, and Anthony Hopkins was lauded for his fine performance. 15 years later, I happened to work with Stephanie Zimbalist, who was known for her role in the TV series Remington Steele with Pierce Brosnan. We talked about John Hirsch's production of The Tempest and the difficulties she'd had with Anthony Hopkins. And she told me she'd bumped into Hopkins a few years after the play had opened, and he apologised profusely for his erratic behaviour. Fortunately, it seems that Sir Anthony Hopkins has overcome his demons and has proven to be one of the most talented and renowned actors of our time. His father would be very proud. Well, the 2 weeks I spent in Los Angeles gave me a taste for what it would be like living and working there. I also learned about the diversity of the place and the fact that Hollywood Boulevard was not Hollywood at all, but really just a tourist trap. And thankfully, over the years, it's had a complete makeover and attracts even more hopefuls with stars in their eyes. I didn't exactly have stars in my eyes, but I did know that LA was where I wanted to be. Next time, my move to the City of Angels. Thanks for listening.